Hello, sister. Welcome to the Hood, Sisterhood in 60. I'm your host, Nicole Clough, and my co-host, Christy Little Jones, and we welcome you here tonight for part 2 of what we wish we knew before we said, I do. So before we dive right in, Christy and I are going to take just a couple minutes just to share a little bit about ourselves before we dive into some of the juicy tea for tonight. So I am a mom of 3 amazing girls. I am a newly single mom. I am divorced as of 2019 or 2020. It's 2020, y'all. I was divorced as of 2020. It felt like 2019. But I have been divorced now for a few years, and I was married to my ex-husband for 15 years and known him for 30. So we have been in this thing for a long time. And I think the beautiful part about this season in my life is that I'm learning how to co-parent well. And that to me is an amazing blessing that even though we're divorced, we have remained friends so that we can be a blessing to our children in this time and in this season of their teenage years. So I love, 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 love being an encouragement to women. So I pray that anytime I share or we share our story, that it's a blessing to you. And I'm a creative, I'm a minister, and I'm a woman that's just passionate about doing what we're doing tonight. And that is celebrating you. So, Christy, tell us about yourself.
Love it, sis. Hello, sister. My name is Christy Little Jones. I will be a wife for 20 years this year. And I'm so proud of us. I'm so proud of us.
Yes.
No, I have 3 amazing teenagers, and I inherited a man. He's a man now. So they are 16, 17, and 18, and love being a mom, love being a wife. It has been a journey. I am a marriage and family champion and the chief cheerleader for women all over the world. And I too love to encourage and celebrate women and really be an encouragement and inspiration and really help them to give themselves permission by not only being vulnerable and transparent with my own story to let them know that they're not alone, that I too go through a lot of what many of us as women think, but may not really say or express because we feel like we're alone in doing that. But we do hope that Love and Sisterhood and Sisterhood in 60 will be an encouragement to you that you will share with your friends, your girlfriends, your family members, and your circle as a way to encourage and let other women know in your life that they're not alone, but also we hope that our vulnerability and our transparency will encourage you to do the same, because it really does change your relationships when you can have the courage to be transparent and vulnerable with each other. So excited that you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, that is so awesome, sis. And what an amazing blessing, right? To be able to be in this place. So, ladies, let's jump in, shall we? Now, I know last week we started off with some questions, just pulling things out, very unscripted and just talking from our heart for many different topics. But we didn't get to the good part. And so tonight, it's time to get to the good part, the juicy juice, right? I was just the juicy juice. I was just buying some apple juice for my girls, and I was like, the juicy juice. You know what juicy juice is? The brand, right? So we get into the juicy juice tonight.
Juicy juice.
It is totally it is not from concentrate, y'all. Okay, this is the real deal, Holyfield, what we're talking about tonight. So I said we were just going to dive into Bridgerton. So let me just give you a little bit of a background about me. I was a virgin when I got married. And just so you know, I was a virgin by choice. I don't know what happened to me at 11 years old when I gave my heart to Jesus. And I, went to a church, and I believe I just saw some things that I thought was a little bit different. Like, I I thought white dresses were supposed to be for women who were pure. I didn't know you could be pregnant walking down the aisle in a white dress back then when I was 11. And so I think part of it was, semi judgment from the church, when we make those types of comments about people wearing a white dress, like who cares what color dress you wear, right? It's a tradition and it's something that's always been done. But it was ingrained in my mind. And I thought, Lord, when I get married, I want to wear a white dress and I want it to mean something. So I remember years ago, I don't know if it was a mentor, I don't know if it was a family member, I don't know if it was something I heard on television, but I heard the comment that, your body is the only thing that you can really give away one time and it be meaningful, and that, it's the best gift that you can give, but you can only give that gift once. So make it the right person, right? So for me, that was a decision that I made. So when I decided that I wanted to be a virgin when I got married, I didn't know I wasn't going to get married till 36, y'all. So I didn't know that. And then just add another layer to this whole piece, because I know some of y'all like, yeah, right, sure you were. That which you do all those years up till you were 36. Okay, all right, hold on. All right, we'll get to all that. But I will say this, there was a point in time in my life where God said, being a virgin isn't about keeping your legs closed, y'all. It's a posture of your heart. It's an internal decision that you make. It really starts in the spirit of who you are, right? So, okay, let's move it forward. So Bridgerton, right? So what was it, 2020 during the pandemic, sis? Like everyone was talking about Bridgerton. Now, some time ago, before I broke free.
So Bridgerton
Bridgerton. Yeah, go ahead. Share with us about it. Go ahead. You tell a little bit.
Bridgerton is a show that was created by Shonda Rhimes, and it was on Netflix, and it came out in 2020. And it was, so the premise of the story is, sis, help me out.
So the premise of the story is about, about high society and how young ladies were presented as what you would call a diamond, or the premier woman, the woman who would be sought after. And they have to find a suitor, and they have to find, that's when women had dowries, and men, paid for their brides, if you will. And ladies had to be prim and proper and virginal and, unsullied, if you will. They weren't touched by men. They couldn't be alone in a room with a man, or else they would figure she was compromised. And so then he had to marry her. So there were so many rules back then to society. And so Bridgerton sort of set the stage for, this young lady, this diamond, Daphne, who was looking for a suitor, looking for, because she was not a princess, but she was very wealthy. Her brother was the Von Count. And so she was a duchess, or she became a duchess. I can't remember what her actual title was, but nevertheless. So it was all about her finding this husband, or finding the man, I guess, or like she and the Duke, who she caught the eye of, he caught her eye and she caught his. And so they began to build this friendship with one another, and they kind of pretended that he was, courting her so other men would desire her over him. And what happened was they ended up falling in love. Okay. But she, being a virgin, had no idea about sex at all. And I think it's something back then, it was just very taboo to talk about. I think it was, mothers were shy about talking about it. Men, of course, all the men in the show, even though they acted a little bit frisky, their whole line, their line was, "I am a gentleman. I am a gentleman." And so gentlemen don't treat women in a particular way, and they don't, make sport of the women that they're with. Those are the words that they used back then, making sport of a woman. And so it really got very racy. Like in the beginning, it was very, low key. They're talking, they're engaging. And then you start seeing this build between this passion and this chemistry between Daphne and the Duke. You got to see it grow. And she, being a young girl, having no idea about sex, then she gets married to this grown man. She is like seemingly a teenager,
Right,
and she gets
very
married
young.
to this, yes, to this grown man, and she has no idea what to do. And so he's telling her different things to do along the way that sort of surprised her. Like one thing he told her, tell her to touch herself. And she's like, what are you talking about? Touch yourself? What do you mean? And so then she goes and experiments with that. And then what happens is they get to the point of being married, right? So we're going to done talk about Bridgerton, and let's get to the whole point. So the Duke happened to just turn this whole girl's world out, this young girl. And she just was like, oh my gosh, like her mother didn't tell her anything. She's like, I know nothing. And he's like, he just took her through the whole process. He walked her through the process of her first sexual experience. And for her, it kind of blew her mind. And then from then, that's all it was for the next, episode and a half.
Eight episodes, right? Like, can we do something else? Like,
I know, it's like, really, y'all at it again?
right.
But the long and short of that is that so many people just don't know. Now, I am going to say, I was a grown woman, so there should have been many things that I did know, right? But I wasn't out experiencing that. I wasn't sleeping around with men. I dated men. Yes, absolutely loved them, hands down. Did we do things that were not appropriate? Sure, we did. Absolutely. I'm not dead. But I had to set some limits for myself as to what was okay and what wasn't okay, right? And so for me, I think what I wish I knew before I said I do was what my sexual appetite or my drive or my interest would be. Because when you're not doing anything, with your spouse or my ex-husband, we didn't do anything. We kissed each other and that was it. There was no petting, there was no this, there was no that, because what you're told is, what I was told was, you're a woman of God and we don't act like that. We don't do those types of things, as men and women of God, you just don't. And so you kind of go in a little bit blind, like, okay, well, what are we supposed to be doing then? How is this thing supposed to really go down? And I'm like 36 and I feel like I wish I would have known ahead of time what that would be like, because then the expectation would be very different. The expectation for, how things were done sexually, how we engaged in conversation, which we didn't do a lot of engaging in conversation. So I think there was a lot of things that were said or that I was steeped in as a believer that was just taboo. Like, you just don't do those types of things because you are a woman of God and you want to be an example. And so I think there was a lot of pressure to live a particular way, but yet go into marriage sort of blind in a way.
Interesting. So if you had known, like, how would that have made a difference? Like, like what you wish you knew is, what your sexual appetite would have been. How would that have made a difference by you knowing before you got married?
I think I would not have had inhibitions. I think there would have been a liberty and a freedom. I would have been comfortable in my own skin, comfortable in my sexuality, comfortable in my ability to be a woman in the bedroom. I think there's something to be said about a woman who's confident in who she is sexually, because I think at the end of the day, in some ways, there is a side to men who love a dominant woman, or a woman
Mhm.
who is strong in that area sexually. And I think there has to be a reciprocated interest. It can't just be, one person initiating, or, we're on a schedule type thing. There
Right.
has to be that passion and that, that variety,
Mhm.
like, okay, because let's just talk about Bridgerton for a minute. Because every woman was like, can I have can I have him?
Girl, listen.
Do we get one of his? Do
Right,
we get the Duke? Do
right.
we
I'm
get
like,
Simon?
"Ooh." I'm like,
I know.
"Woo."
You're
Yes,
like this.
honey.
Okay, Jesus, help
Like,
Jesus.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah.
Right. And so to me, there are so many people, and I remember at one point, a minister friend of mine who I had made this comment about, just in her marriage, she made a comment about something, and I said to her, I was like, honey, look, you better go on ahead and get yourself a pole in your bedroom and throw that up there. She's like, oh my gosh, like, like, what do you mean put a pole? I was like, get that pole up in there, dude. She's like, oh my gosh, no, like you shouldn't have to do all that in the bedroom. Excuse me? What do you mean you shouldn't have to do all that? What I don't even know what that means. You shouldn't have to do all that. And the word of God says, the marriage bed is to be kept undefiled. So what you and your husband do behind closed doors, that is your business. As long as you don't go against the word of God, you good. You're good. It's between you two.
That
So
is
I wish I would have known. Yeah.
interesting. I love that, because then I think though, if you had known, would that have brought more temptation to fall during, like the time you were trying to remain pure before you got married, right? So
I,
really,
I don't know. I don't think it would have. I mean, I
how would
think
you have known? Like, how do you know without knowing?
well, first of all, it's not like I've never, kissed a guy, there was never any
Right,
type of, physical
right.
contact that I didn't know, when the guy was aroused or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like those are things that you know that my body responded to all of those things. You
Right.
have that. But to me, anything you do is a decision. When you make a decision, that's it. You have to tell Kitty to be quiet. It's okay, girl. Let's go get you a little shower. You'll be good. You'll be all right. Just settle down. Stop meowing for now, honey. You be good. You
Right.
be good.
Stop
So
meowing.
yeah,
Oh,
and but at the same time, you have to also use the wisdom of the word,
yeah.
don't arouse love before it's time, know how to possess your vessel, know how to keep yourself out of those types of situations. So again, it's all based upon your decision. But at the same time, I think having conversations about sex, which we didn't do a lot of that in my marital counseling. It was like, hey, watch a video and, go from there. And it's like,
Wow.
I was here, he was overseas, watch a video.
Wow. Yeah. I think that would require a lot of discipline, one, right? I feel
Yeah.
like the discipline and the commitment piece I didn't know about that. Like I didn't really have um I think the example of abstaining until marriage or
Mhm.
really understanding the power of that because
Yeah.
uh, I didn't understand until late. It was too late, right? It was too late. Like, oh, that sex was God created sex for marriage and
Yes.
not
Yes.
before marriage, right? And so I
Right.
didn't understand that until I really started having a relationship with God. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because being a I've coached really engaged couples,
Mhm.
preparing them for marriage, and I've also coached married couples in crisis fighting to stay married. So those are the
Yeah.
kind of the two distinct couples that I've worked with for literally over 17 years. And
Mhm.
it's very interesting that 90% of the
Mm.
issue is are usually around, especially with couples in crisis. When
Mhm.
I ask them, "When's the last time you had sex?" It's like, they have to think about it.
Yeah.
Really, they have to think about it.
That's
Like, I don't know, a few months maybe?
Mhm.
I was like, "Wow." I mean, it's like every time, like for 17 years, like that has been the thing. And so I'm like, okay, well, the first thing that you need to do is have sex. And sometimes it's
Right.
hard. And sometimes it's been hard. And I'm like, okay, well, why is it hard? And though the
Mhm.
couples that have gotten, really just created a safe place for them to be open and honest is like, it's easier to masturbate. What?
That's the problem.
Yes, and I realized that there are
Mhm.
people or couples who would rather masturbate than really pursue their spouse or significant other, or that, deal with or be afraid of rejection from their spouse, or and
Mm.
and that really concerned me. It concerns me
Yeah.
that that is a choice, that you would rather masturbate to, whether it's a picture or a video or even in your own thoughts, over the the really experiencing the purpose of
Yeah.
sex in marriage, in your marriage relationship. And I'm it concerns me that this is something that is running rampant in a lot of marriages today. And
Yes.
I think, to go back to one of our favorite quotes is about, Dr. Miles Monroe, that says, when you don't
Yeah.
understand the purpose of a thing, abuse is inevitable. So if people don't
Yeah.
understand that God created sex for marriage, then
Yes.
abuse is inevitable, right? And that's exactly
Exactly.
where we are as a society.
Exactly.
Sex is being
Exactly.
abused beyond, I mean, it's like a multi-billion dollar industry. And
Crazy.
it's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, it's been really I don't know how to the things that I would share in the couple sessions, really talking through
Mhm.
about why you would choose and why you would rather choose masturbation over really pursuit. And it really is the difficulty or the conflict that they have. So whether it
Mhm.
is an offense that they can't overcome,
Yeah.
whether it's the pride of really
Mhm.
pursuing their spouse or significant other, whether it's the husband who desires his wife to pursue him more, and she's like, well, I'm not going to pursue you because that's your job, right? And so there's
Right.
got to be some level of even just flexibility or really open communication, which is another issue in most
Right.
marriages, is
Right.
just poor communication. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that some people just don't know how to communicate well.
That's
They
true.
just
Like,
don't know how. They've
yeah.
been raised in a household where it's just yelling all the time, or it's
Mhm.
cursing all the time, and it's not
Mhm.
listening. But I think that
Right.
really, when you change your heart to have
Mm.
a heart posture, like you said, a posture to
Yes.
seek understanding, it
Mhm.
requires listening. It requires listening. I'm so mad because I wanted to do this uh, exercise with you, and I forgot my dollar. So we'll have to do it when we do a session on communication, because it's so
Okay.
interesting, the perspective that you have, and you
Mhm.
assume that the person that you're talking to has as well.
Yes.
But
Well,
they
again, you know what we said about assume last week, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's so important. And I think one of the big things is that is so good. Um, you know, the fact that that as a society we've allowed sex to be elevated above our commitment and our love for each other. I think in many ways, we were sold a template, in my opinion. I think there was an expectation going into marriage, and I think we've talked about this a little bit last week, that there is an expectation and there's a template. There is like a I don't want to say default, I'll just say a template that we were steeped in over the years about your godly husband, godly marriage, you're gonna have godly kids and a godly dog, raising a godly house with just praise and worship, and just where there's this 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 persona, or this
Formula, right?
form. Yeah, there you go, a formula that breeds these successful Christian marriages.
Yeah.
But what you're not told is that, one, everybody's not created equal. Two, everybody's not really who they say they are. They're not showing up authentically as who they say they are. You talked about this last week. They represent one thing in the beginning, but then when you get in the weeds of the relationship, then you start seeing what's really going on behind the scenes. And so I think that has played such a major role in our relationships. And so with masturbation being such a big thing, it tears down the vows, the structure, the confidence, the
Absolutely.
love of your spouse in a relationship. So what happens, when you get to this point where like you don't love your spouse anymore? How do you get from that place of, where you're not in love with your spouse anymore? Because to me, sex is saying I do over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
good.
when you no longer say I do, and when you're masturbating, you're just saying it's about me,
Mhm.
how does a marriage survive? How does love survive in those types of situations? What happens if like you're like, okay, well, I just ain't loving them anymore. Like, where do you go from there?
Ooh, 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 that is the $1,000,000 question, right? We live in a society where really divorce in from people who are churched, so to speak, people who are
Mhm.
believers and those who aren't are over it's over
Yes,
65%
that's crazy.
divorce and then divorce.
Yeah.
So, how do you maintain a marriage when you don't feel like you want to be in it anymore? You're like, you're
Mhm.
not feeling your spouse anymore. You don't love them. You're not even sure if you like them, right? And I feel like I have been all those in the last
Mm,
20
yeah,
years. Like, and that's a real, and I didn't realize that that was part of the roller coaster of marriage, that there would be a
yeah.
time where I'm like, I don't know if I like my spouse very much. Like, I don't like you very much, and don't touch
Mm.
me. Right? You know how we always like, don't touch me. When you're,
Yeah,
you're in high
yes.
school and you're young and you're mad and they like want to hug you,
You're
don't
like, don't
touch.
touch me.
You feel like
Yep.
that in marriage too. Like, don't touch
Yes.
me. And it's like, I didn't realize that that was a thing that
Hmm.
there would be times where I was like, I feel hoodwinked and bamboozled. Like, how
Mm.
did I end up here? Like,
Right.
who is this person? This is not the person who swept me off my feet before giving me a ring, right? And I think I think that we have to be one, look at ourselves in the mirror and be
Right.
very really honest with who we are. And I believe that people who are committed and really have a sense of integrity. So integrity is what you do when no one's watching, right? And
Hmm.
so when you make a decision and if you go like really go back on the integrity of the decision or the commitment of the decision, there's a betrayal there, right? But the betrayal is only for
Hmm.
your with yourself. Because if you
Yeah.
make a decision or a choice or a commitment to do something and then you no longer do it, you betrayed your own self, your
Come
own
on.
commitment,
Come on.
your own integrity for yourself, right? So
Hmm.
when in marriage, when you make a commitment to say I do, then you now have to look at yourself when things are facing you in
Hmm.
when certain situations are
Yeah.
facing you in the face, right? And you're
Hmm.
like, can I really do this? Do I even
Mm.
want to do this? Right? So you've
Mm.
got to go back to a couple of things. One, I believe every single choice, every single decision that you make has a harvest.
Come
It
on.
has a consequence. Every decision, whether you get married 15 times, whether you have an
Hmm.
affair, whether you give and you serve, whether I believe that every seed, everything you do, every choice, every decision is a seed, right? It
Yep.
has a consequence, it has a harvest. So
Yes.
when I think about, and again, there's a level of grace here because many people don't know this. Many people don't realize
Hmm.
that everything I do has a consequence. So
Yeah.
whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's shady, whether it's, behind closed doors, whether it's out of secrecy, whether it's out of
Hmm.
manipulation or control, like they don't unless you have a knowledge that whatever you do, it will show up in your life in one way, shape, or form,
Hmm.
then they're going to be willy-nilly and do whatever they want in the moment
Right.
because they're
Come
driven
on.
by their emotions, right?
Hmm.
So when I realized that, okay, I have 3 children. So
Hmm.
there's a generational curse of divorce in my family. My parents were divorced, grandparents were divorced, my husband's parents divorced, his grandparents were married, but his parents have um, been married a couple times. So I realized, I don't want my children to experience divorce, right? And then just to being transparent, honest, I've been married before, and so has my husband. So there was a level of divorce that is something that we're just literally passing down to our kids, right? If we're
Mhm.
not conscious and aware of it. Now, it's
Right,
not
right.
that there aren't times where I'm like, uh-oh, am I gonna make it? Like, am I gonna make it happily ever after? I don't know.
Mhm.
Many times, as you know, sis, that I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
right? But I think about, what if I make the decision to run to the divorce court? How is this going to affect my children? How is this going to
Yeah.
affect the hundreds of couples that we have helped
Mhm.
through this process, right? How is that going to affect them? And
Yeah.
what is it that I want, that what harvest, what
Mhm.
consequence is it that I want to have? And so in those moments when I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it, I really think about that. I think about my
Yeah.
kids getting divorced. I think about my kids making decisions that hurt them or harm them, or even my grandchildren, right? Because
Mhm.
decisions, sis, aren't they like a decision that you make is up to 4 generations?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily the decision in that way, but it talked about, the sins that, well, if you say this sins or decision, yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's to the third and fourth generation in many
Third and
ways.
fourth
Yeah,
generation, right? So there's certain things that we can do that will affect our children, our grandchildren, our great grandchildren. So I wanted to be intentional in making the decision to fight for my marriage, even when I don't
yeah,
feel like it. And so I
yeah,
think that being in love or staying in love in your marriage is a decision.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And I could not have said that better. And I think, having been on the other side of that, having been in that space where I've stood and fought for so many years,
Absolutely.
and I felt like I was fighting against, hope in many ways, where I stayed in a marriage for, what was it, 6 years,
Easily.
a sexless,
Yeah.
loveless marriage, to really want to change things and stay in it for my kids, and make sure they had a home. And there was a lot of sacrifice that went on in that time.
Huge.
And but I will say that even in the midst of that, I had to keep my heart in line with love. And so when we
Oh,
talked
let's
about,
talk about
how,
that.
what's
Right.
that?
How hard is that? Right?
That's very
How hard?
hard. That's very hard. Without getting into, the story of it all, but, when you're challenged to love, in the midst of not getting that reciprocated love, you really have to dig deep on that, and really have to be fueled by the power of the Lord to do those types of things, because it's so easy to let go. It's so easy to walk away. It's so easy to just kind of wash your hands of it and keep it moving. And there are times, sisters, that is necessary. I mean, there are
100%.
times when it is absolutely necessary. So,
Absolutely.
no judgment, no shade whatsoever, because I still feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want this to happen to my children. So, I really need to stay in the
Yeah.
situation. Um,
That's the
but I
template
need
too.
it, but I, that's that template, right? That's the
That's
template.
the template.
You're a woman of God. You got to stand, you got to fight, you got to pray, you got to believe God, you got to trust Him that God's going to turn that thing around. Here's the same thing. God does turn situations around.
Yes.
There are many situations that have been turned around. Amen, right? However, you know, God needs willing people. God needs willing people. He just does. One can't be willing without the other. even if there's a glimpse of hope, or there's a glimpse of, I'm going to stay in this thing and fight. God, little becomes much in the eyes of God. There just has to be a glimpse of that. And prayer, honey, changes things.
Absolutely. And
Period.
absolutely. And can I just even mention that it is really, it takes two to fight for a marriage.
Yeah, it does.
It takes two
Absolutely.
to fight. So if you are like, I've even worked with couples who were fighting for their marriage, but they were the only ones, right?
Right.
So that
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's nearly, I mean, impossible unless, like you said, there's an encounter or an intervention where God comes
Right.
in and really changes the other person's heart, because
Yeah.
it is, you can't control your spouse's choices,
Right.
control his
Right.
decisions. You can't control his
Mm-hmm.
desire to want to fight for the marriage. So,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do you, right? You've got to
Yeah.
do you. You've got to be comfortable and confident to make decisions that support you and what you desire. If you're wanting to fight for your marriage, you fight for your marriage. And
Yeah.
so the thing is like, is is don't default. Don't let divorce be the default, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if it's something that you've pushed through, you've thought through, you realize, okay, he's cheated 3 times, right? then then that is something different. But we're talking about just having tough issues, conversation, or like
Yeah.
tough communication. You don't like him anymore because he's gained 50 pounds, or he's lost 50 pounds, or whatever it is. But the thing is that you just don't like him anymore because you guys have you've drifted apart, you become more distant,
Yeah.
you're two ships passing in the night. There's no
Mhm.
longer a connection where you're engaged in in and togetherness. You're not doing life
Yeah.
together. You're living together, but you're doing life separately, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
important for you to recognize those things. I mean, I think getting help, really helping, like
Right.
seeing a counselor or a marriage counselor, coach, therapist, to really help you bring, mesh back together,
Yeah.
get the get the wheels back on the rails, because if they've come off the rails, sometimes it's difficult to get back on the rails by yourself because you're in the
Yeah.
forest, right? But getting help can help you to do that. And I really think everyone needs a coach and a therapist, right? A coach,
Amen
therapist,
to that.
pastor, like literally, like we need all of them, because
Yes.
it's so difficult sometimes to do it by ourselves, and we're not designed to. God designed us to do life together and help each other.
Amen. Amen to that. And just to finish out on that, even when you go to counseling, honestly, you have to be willing to do the work.
Uh,
You can't just show up at counseling and not
I,
do the work.
and poof, like magically, poof, we've gone to 10 sessions. We should be better. No, it doesn't work like that.
You got to do the work. You got to do the work, or
And the
it's
work,
futile. It's futile.
yes, the work
Come on.
the work is ugly, it's dirty, it's stinky, it's
It's all that.
uncomfortable. It
Yes.
is
Yes.
all of that. And
Yes.
most people don't want to face it because it is all of that. And
Yeah.
especially because they have to look at the mirror. They have to look in the mirror at themselves as they're raggedy, they're ugly, their blind spots are like, "Ooh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
selfish. Ooh, I'm prideful.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm inconsiderate.
Absolutely.
Wow." Like, yeah. And then when you have to admit
Absolutely.
that to yourself and you got to work on it, it's a whole different
Mm.
ballgame. But I guarantee you 100%, if you do it, it will change every relationship in your life. And
Come on.
starting with your spouse, it will change every relationship when you start
Yes.
looking at yourself and start doing the work on you and not worrying about other people and what they got to do,
Yep.
because you got
Yep.
enough of your own. You got your own to-do list of things of that you need to work
Yep.
on to become the best version of yourself. It changes
Yep.
everything.
Absolutely. Amen to the amen on that. I totally agree. And so having said that, so what does that look like in terms of leading? Like who's leading the charge in this? What does leadership look like even in these types of situations? Is it, you're expecting your spouse to kind of get in line and do the leading, or do you take the reins? Is it co-leading? Like what does this type of charge look like, especially in rebuilding love relationships?
Listen, sis, this this is such a hard thing to me because I feel like everyone admires a leader. Everyone wants a leader. And I think like to your point about the template, right? Having a Christian template of what marriage is supposed to be like. We're supposed
Mhm.
like we thought that our husbands are supposed to lead, they're supposed to provide, they're supposed to take care of us, they're supposed to
Mhm.
initiate, they're supposed to do everything. And we
Mhm.
just come along for the ride because that's what I grew up thinking, all right, that's what they're supposed to
Yes.
do. No, that is not my experience. And so I feel like when you are in a relationship, you know your
Mhm.
strength and
Yeah.
typically you know your partner's strengths, right? Even in
Mhm.
sisterhood, in friendship, you know each
Yes.
other's strengths, right? Now, everybody doesn't know their weaknesses. I think that's
Mm.
part of the challenge,
That's
right?
good.
So I feel like even I think that men too, there's so much pressure for them to lead in marriage. There's especially
Mhm.
Christian men. There's so much pressure for them to do everything because they've been told the template too. They've been conditioned with the template. Like they're supposed to
Right.
do everything. So they're afraid to admit, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no
Okay.
idea how to lead. I have no idea how to do taxes. I have no idea how to launch or cast vision for my family. I have
Mm.
no idea what I'm doing, right? So in fear of judgment, criticism, that like oh disappointment
Yeah.
in their wife, who knows? So many of them walk in this space where they're pretending or they're acting and then you as a wife, you're looking at them like, I know you're acting. I know you're pretending because I see you don't know what you're doing, but you can't say that. You can't go up to them and say, "You need some help? You're like, do you know? I don't need help. I know what." Then we got the pride, right? So I think that if we had men who were really genuinely vulnerable and honest with
Mhm.
their wives to say, "Babe, I really don't know what I don't know how to do that." Right? But with
Yes.
with the safe place that their wife won't judge.
Mhm.
What do you mean? How do you with a wife that would say, "Okay, babe, let's figure it out together," right? Without
Mhm.
judgment, without
Mhm.
criticism. And I think that that sweet
Yeah.
spot where there's a safe place that's created in marriage from the wife who's not judging her husband, from the husband who feels safe enough to be genuinely honest and authentic with
Mhm.
his wife because he knows his wife's got his back and that she's not going to judge, she's not going to reject, or she's not going to criticize, but that she's going to welcome the and embrace the
Yes. Yes.
expression of vulnerability that he's given. It's
Mhm.
that right there is
Mhm.
a marriage of oneness that we as women want and desire, but husbands do too, men do too,
Yeah.
because it's a safe place for both of you. And,
Right.
I think that in leadership, when it comes to men leading, the pressure gets to them and the fear of rejection or criticism or judgment gets them on the
Yeah.
other side. So they just
Yeah.
walk this line and they're pretending, but they're scared. They don't know what they're doing. They make mistakes. Their fear of failure, like all of those things are there coming up. But we,
Mhm.
I believe, as women, as wives, have to create that safe place. And so, as far as leadership, I think that somebody has to be courageous enough to either start the conversation, have the conversation,
Mhm.
like approach the conversation and really through communication and I think authenticity really. What do you think?
Yeah, that's good. That's good, sis. It's so interesting because I think sometimes we equate, leadership in our home, where our spouse is concerned, in comparison to how we were raised by our dads.
Yep.
I think we sort of morph what we're familiar with and what we've grown up with, and we place that as an expectation, for our husbands. And I think that is, because they always say, "Oh, you marry your daddy," that type of thing. And it's like that's where you kind of miss it in the beginning when it comes to leadership, when you have an expectation for them to lead like someone else leads, instead of understanding how they lead and being able to come alongside of their leadership.
Ooh,
But then you get disappointed because they ain't leading like your daddy lead. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
so then you put those unnecessary expectations on your husband. They're unwarranted in many ways because he wasn't born to be your dad, he was born to be your spouse. And so
yeah.
you have to learn how to honor him in that way. And I think we just haven't been developed.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't been developed
Mhm.
in the ability to recognize leadership and to come alongside it, not in a daunting, oppressive type of way, like we got this, we can do this ourselves type thing. Because we're just as scared on the other side. We don't have no idea what we're doing. You know what I mean? We have that example in our moms, and I think we have to look at it from that side too. We've been developed and we've been trained by our moms in a particular way, but our husband's not trying to marry our mothers. He's trying to marry the wife, his wife.
Right.
And so we have to abandon our our semblance of leadership,
Yeah.
and really understand who we're called to be in the marriage that we have. And I think it all falls back to identity, in who we are, how we show up, and where it is that we want to go together. And I think if we could begin to solve those types of conversations and have those types of conversations, before, during, and during the marriage, we can sort of begin to eliminate some things when it comes to breakdown of marriage, communication, love, that sort of thing, because we can each bring our gifts, not what we expect each other's gift to be,
Yes.
but we can bring our gifts and be able to sharpen each other the way God intended. So that's my thought on it.
Ooh, that is so good.
Yeah.
You've got to know where, like, really know your role in the
Yeah.
marriage. If you're
Yeah.
supposed to lead more in your marriage, then lead more, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to rewrite all of the conditioning, right? We've got to rewrite that conditioning that we've been programmed. We've got to
Yeah.
rewrite the program that we are believing that marriage has to look like this ABC, right? Because when your
Mhm.
marriage looks like FZS, you're gonna be like,
What?
what's right? No, it's supposed to be ABC. I don't like this one. Let me get a new one, right? And it's not ABC. The second one isn't ABC either. It's F and T and then L, right? You're like,
Right,
I
right.
don't
What?
like this one. I'm gonna get a new one, right? You think that we're supposed to get this, it's supposed to look
Cookie
a certain
cutter.
way, right?
Yeah.
And it's not, because we're all unique, we're all different. So our husbands are going to be
Yes.
different. You are
Yes.
going to be different. And so there's a blueprint per se, right? Where
Mhm.
there's kindness and there's love and there needs to be
Mhm.
admiration and respect and honesty and trust and all of those things, right? There's some
Mhm.
blueprint things that need to be in place, but
Mhm.
the coating, the outside, the color of your marriage is going to look different from everyone else's. And I think, like
Absolutely.
you said, giving yourself permission to allow it to be different, or even
Yeah.
be open to it being different than the
Yeah.
the template that you were hoping that it was going to be, and not spending so many years being disappointed that that is not the template.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Amen to that.
Right.
Amen.
Like,
Absolutely.
oh, no, it's not the template. Go ahead, sis.
Absolutely. And I think, and I just want to leave with, leave you with this. We are dynamic people. We are forever changing, ever developing, ever growing. And the Christy that you were when you first got married is
Yeah,
not the same Christy you are right now. So the
yeah,
leader you were back then is not the same leader you are today. And so we have to take that time to really know who we are, perpetually, perpetually coming into the reality of who we are and who your spouse is, recognizing those things that are different, celebrating and champion those areas in his life or her life, that have grown and developed and matured. And you see, though, you have to let each other know that I see you. And I think when we begin to validate those places in those spaces in each other's lives, we can see there being a greater connection and unification come out of that. So, all is not lost. The sex, the leadership, all of those things can really be what you desire and expect them to be as you two come in sync with each other, honoring and recognizing the people that you are now, celebrating and championing one another, and really being able to have conversations without judgment, and accepting each other for who you are and where you are. And so, yeah, that's just my thought
so
on that.
good. So good. That's wonderful, sis. I love, we could talk about this all day, right?
Yes, we
So,
could. We could. So we got to go
right,
though.
we do. We gotta go. We gotta go. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is that we have a download for you. And it
Mhm,
is 20 things we wish we knew before we said I do. And so
mhm.
go make sure you go to the show notes and click on the link so that you can download those. And there's a little piece of it too that is like a worksheet for you. So
Mhm.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. Please make sure you download that. It's great. You're gonna love it.
And
So
don't forget
how
to
about
subscribe, right? We gotta
all right,
we gotta
you gotta
remind them.
subscribe,
Don't forget
right?
to
Turn on your
subscribe.
notifications.
Yes, turn on your notifications. Yes. Join us in our in our tribe, in our community. We'd love to get to know you
Yeah.
better for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you for joining us for Sisterhood in 60. And we so appreciate your presence. And next week, do we have something that's so good for you? Oh my gosh, I just love your green eyes, girl. I just love them. But I don't, because that green eye of envy, honey, it pops itself up so many times. So next week, we're going to talk about envy. We're going to talk about those green eyes that show up every once in a while. Well, they kind of almost show up every time you turn on social media. Every time
Mhm.
you look at somebody else's page or hear about something that someone is doing, it's an opportunity for those green eyes to show up. But we are going to dive into that subject next week in just such a fantastic way. We hope that you join us because we have a really great perspective on envy and how it really sneaks up on you and begins to rob and steal from you in ways that you couldn't even imagine. So I hope you join us next week right here on Sisterhood in 60.